Imagine yourself walking through a tunnel in the underground ruins of the ancient Sumerian Empire.
Jason!
The camera focuses tightly behind your back, adding to that sense of claustrophobia and dread as you clunkily move through the caverns.
I'm close, man! I'm coming!
Suddenly, you hear the distinctive screams of famed High School Musical diva Sharpay Evans from ahead. You know you're about to be met with a heart-pounding fight against some godforsaken terror that will be sure to test your quick-time event skills. This is what it's like to play every game in the Dark Pictures Anthology series, and its latest tale, House of Ashes, is no different. If you think Until Dawn was one of the strongest horror games to come out of the last generation of consoles and haven't minded the growing pains Supermassive Games has had to try to anthologize the series, House of Ashes is its best work since Until Dawn in 2015. However, if you've become bored with the formula or never liked it in the first place, this latest story probably won't change your mind.
Are you ready?
Are you?
In some ways, that's the rub of this entire review. Supermassive hasn't made any massive changes to how these games play or look outside of new difficulty options.
Doesn't this remind you of Old Times Rage?
The facial capture is still mostly great, though sometimes the characters' necks look like they're made out of liquid. Environments look stunning at times, while others will remind you that Supermassive is no longer working with a big budget from Sony. Movement is clunky, even though we now have full control over the camera during exploration, and the bulk of the gameplay comes down to making choices and performing different types of QTEs. It's a formula that Supermassive has used to varying success over the last 3 Dark Pictures games, but in the right circumstances, it still pays off. Without going into spoilers, House of Ashes is very much a step up in storytelling. Both Man of Medan and Little Hope tried to subvert expectations in ways that never felt in the spirit of Until Dawn, but House of Ashes swings the story pendulum back and ends with exciting prospects for an entirely new direction for the series. There are caveats, of course. There are still instances of weirdly stilted dialogue.
Careful, Clarice. That's valuable research.
Yes, sirree.
And certain aspects of the plot don't really pay off in meaningful ways. Plus, the whole idea of a game set in the middle of the Iraq War, with Marines going into a secret compound to search for Saddam's biological weapons, can be off-putting knowing what we know about how that particular conflict turned out.
This place doesn't look much like a weapons silo to me.
There's also some potential for character arcs to feel either unearned or heavily cliched. You can probably guess what might happen when a young Marine and an Iraqi soldier are forced to work together. It can, of course, change depending on your choices, but it never feels like Supermassive is breaking new ground with its character work. If anything, the characters continue to be the weakest part of the Dark Pictures Anthology, though the participants in House of Ashes are a small step up from what we've seen in Man of Medan and Little Hope.
All good?
All good.
Let's do it.
What House of Ashes does do well is the same thing that made Until Dawn so special. Supermassive excels at building tension throughout its best moments, and it subtly uses the environment to help do that. For example, House of Ashes mostly takes place in an underground ruin. Think of films like The Descent for a solid reference point. In both that movie and this game, the creators use tight camera shots as the characters are sneaking through tunnels to add an extra sense of claustrophobia, which greatly increases the scare factor. You never know what's going to be around that next bend, and Supermassive is superb at mixing in both jump scares and other ways to keep you on your toes.
You, Nick?
And for fans of the gory deaths that are seen so often in horror games, the new difficulty options make the QTEs even harder. You can, of course, turn things down to easy for a fun night with friends. On that note, it should be mentioned that co-op remains the best way to play these games. Whether in the same room via movie night or online, this is a fright that you'll want to share. If you want to take things up a notch and really see some blood and guts, the tougher difficulty options will more than oblige. On top of everything else good about House of Ashes, its central mystery marks a return to form for Supermassive. After 2 back-to-back middling endings with Man of Medan and Little Hope, this one finally nails it. That isn't to say it's groundbreaking or guaranteed to blow your socks off, but it's more in line with what many expected to see coming out of Until Dawn. Plus, the implications it has for the future of the franchise are beyond intriguing. If the team can deliver on what they've set up, we might be on the verge of the Dark Pictures Anthology becoming a force in horror games.
By your command.
In many respects, you know exactly what you're getting with the Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes. It's a QTE-filled horror fest that is often stretching against the limitations of its budget. The script could use some polish and the characters could be a little more outside the box. However, the claustrophobic scares work effectively, and the central mystery of House of Ashes signifies a return to what fans loved about Until Dawn. It gives us a tantalizing look at what could be coming in the future. For more, check out our reviews of Back 4 Blood and Metroid Dread, and for everything else, stick with IGN.